Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kurt. Welcome back to Far Lands or Bust. When we exit the hidey hole, there shall be our floating block of gravel, floating block of gravel. You are kind of floating precariously on some grass. Grass. Oh, I apologize. But yeah, welcome back to Far Lands or Bust. This is episode... That's a cow. I was a little bit concerned. This is episode 347 of Far Lands or Bust. It is Friday, April 25th, 2014. Let's grab Wolfie. I think we're all right with our inventory. Bid farewell. Give it a boom. Give it a hug to the floating block of gravel and continue west as we've been doing, as has been done for over 3 years for Far Lands or Bust, and we're continuing to raise money for Child's Play charity over at farlandsorbust.com. Somebody had fun with the numbers because we are currently at $1,414.14 this season. 14. So thank you, everybody. Whether or not you're having fun with the numbers or simply wishing to donate to Child's Play charities to support them, to get toys, books, games to kids in hospitals around the world, I do appreciate it. Going above and beyond the call of duty, and helping people out. This Far Lands expedition is now more than just some crazy guy on the internet trying to reach the Far Lands. We are actually helping people in the real world and hoping to expand that as the season continues, help other charities, organizations, causes that we care about here as Farlanders. And one of those we will be, I don't have anything set up yet, but we'll be talking about a cause, an issue that we discuss many frequentlies. Much frequent. Wow. Very frequently that of the internet and net neutrality and this place where we exist and what makes Far Lands or Bust possible. Careful, Wolfie. So we'll be talking about that. A lot of perhaps not good news, but new news on that front. But first, and actually it's still going on as I record this, I was just watching Elon Musk of SpaceX was giving a press conference, and it was kind of a sudden one, and I kind of assumed it was about the SpaceX launch that we've been discussing the past handful of episodes, really. Did a press conference pretty much announcing and confirming beyond, he let out a few cryptic tweets the days of about the Dragon launch, the Falcon 9. This was the first Falcon 9 to sport the landing legs because they intend to eventually be able to reuse that first stage, which is something that has never been done, even by NASA or any other space agency, commercial or government or otherwise, that is to recover the first stage of a liquid fuel rocket. Obviously, the solid rocket boosters from the space shuttle were recovered after the fact, and if in good shape, they were refurbished and refueled and re-put together and used on future flights. But this is the first time the first stage of a liquid fuel rocket, the lift stage, could be, and that, the solid rocket boosters basically just plummeted back into the ocean and landed softly via parachutes. This one is going to be powered. It's going to basically, after it sets its cargo off, in this case the Dragon capsule, to the International Space Station, it's going to turn around, fire its engines, and return back to the launch site under its engine power and soft land on those landing legs, which is crazy. And this press conference that was going on basically confirmed that this test wasn't to land, but was to basically test the soft landing capabilities in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean. And this is confirming during this press conference that they did indeed do that. They got all the proper telemetry that it did land softly in the ocean and survive the landing Unfortunately, they're saying it did not survive the ocean because it was a stormy seas. High seas, matey, arr. It was stormy seas. It said like 15, 20 meter waves out there, and that broke apart the first stage. And because of those seas, they were not able to have boats. Nobody would go out there in those seas to try to recover the stage as they were wanting to do. So unfortunately, it broke apart. He said they were only able to get out there 2 days later, and they were able to recover some parts, some debris that was remaining, a piece of one of the landing legs, but otherwise the rest of the thing sunk, which is fine. That, it wasn't, like I said, the main mission wasn't to recover this stage, but, I still have yoink. So yeah, that was very cool news, and he did confirm. I was, kind of asking, speaking of precariously perched, it's kind of crazy. I was asking him, surely don't call me Shirley, but surely they have cameras all over the place on these Falcon 9s. Surely there were cameras on board that first stage to try to capture the re-entry and softish landing of that stage. And sure enough, there was, but because they weren't able to recover the stage, they are relying on what was broadcast and what they were able to pick up from the recovery vessels, and they say it was choppy reception, so it's not the best footage, but they will be posting it on their website today after they do their best to clean up the footage to make it somewhat comprehensible, but they're also going to release the raw footage to the general public at large, because they want to kind of crowdsource. They know a lot of people perhaps have more resources, or perhaps are more talented on recovering damaged or staticky footage, so they'll let that happen. So I'm looking forward to that footage. It should be interesting. Hopefully it's the unedited full footage from the point of release of the Dragon capsule and the orbital stage, to the burns it does to basically turn around, and the re-entry. Obviously, I don't believe it would be going fast enough to require thermal protection that much, but also the deployment of the legs, the kind of gimbaling and landing into the ocean. That should be some amazing footage, depending on the quality it is in. So very cool. And he also mentioned, before I switched off and was like, okay, I need to record Far Large Bust, he was like, they're going to do further tests. They have a commercial, not to the International Space Station for NASA, but a commercial satellite to launch, and they're going to do even more fine-tuned testing. He said they're going to get a bigger boat, a reference to Jaws. Alley-oop! They're going to get a bigger boat, and that can hopefully get out to the recovery stage, regardless of the seas, for this next launch. And get closer and closer, kind of hone down the circle of landing, the target. And he said, surprised, this is the thing out of this press conference that surprised me, that they should be able to, given the next few test flights and honing of the accuracy of the landings, they should be able to land the Falcon 9, a Falcon 9 boost stage, back at Cape Canaveral, Florida, back at the launch site before the end of the year. I thought this was at least a couple years off before this would happen. I mean, they're still doing static tests. They're still, this is the first time they've actually launched with the legs, but just the speed at which, the speed power at which SpaceX can turn around these projects is something, I guess we're a little bit used to the government agency, the NASA timeline of things, which tend to be on the scale of decades, whereas SpaceX is able to really turn around with a lot of reliability the advancements of these projects. So that would be amazing. Before the end of this year, we might be seeing the soft landing on hard land back at Kennedy Space Center. Well, Cape Canaveral technically is where they launched from. Kennedy Space Center is the NASA-operated launch facility. Cape Canaveral is the Air Force launch facility. That's where SpaceX launches from, and what has control over the range and whatnot. That's pretty amazing. That would be very cool to see. So interesting. come to Far Lands or Bust for cutting edge, bleeding edge news in space, because I tune in to these otherwise boring press conferences and I take my notes. I should be one of those guys in the audience asking questions. I'm like a reporter. This is news to you. News to use. There we go. Ha, I'm sure somebody's used that before, but yeah, all right, let's I didn't expect to talk about that so long, but apparently I have. We have other topics to talk about. I know before I kind of said maybe Fridays should be Fan Fridays and I answer questions. Ha ha, that didn't last. I have news. So let's get to that news in the morning. And soft landing. Oh yeah, that was a soft landing. Well done, Kurt. Thanks, Kurt. Let's try to get back out to our boat, and let's talk about the Googles. The Googles! As we know, Google Plus sort of strong-armed its way into our little YouTube infrastructure here within the past year. That is, in order to utilize YouTube's social, quote-unquote, features like the comments and whatnot, and using other features, you had to use a Google Plus profile. You had to convert to that, and it was supposed to smooth out the comments and make them less of a horrible, hellish landscape to peruse. And they did not do such a thing. Basically, there's a report coming from TechCrunch, and that I picked up on Ars Technica. I never know how to say the name of that website. That earlier yesterday, the head of Google Plus, Vic Gundrota, pretty much it was his brainchild, Google Plus. It was his project. He was like the VP of social, whatever crazy title he had at Google, announced his departure from Google. And that was the first flag that something is not quite right in the Google Plus's world. And sure enough, there's this report, unconfirmed report. Google is still being very hush-hush about it, but unconfirmed report that there will be indeed a scaling down, a scaling back of the Google Plus. Perhaps not ending Google Plus entirely, but with the departure of the head of the project, they're also claiming that 1,000 to 1,200 employees, which make up the Google Plus team, which is like, wow, really? That many people have been working on Google Plus? But those employees are going to be distributed elsewhere and on other projects within Google, other divisions. They're saying that it obviously has not... Ooh, look at that mountain. I love that mountain. It's so gradual and slopey. You don't really get this so much in the current terrain generation of Minecraft. Although, with the new 1.8 terrain generation options, maybe you could. But I do like this little hill. So yeah, Google Plus, it's been said and reported that even internally within Google, the whole Google Plus being forced upon YouTube was seen as a rocky move, and not everybody agreed with that, even within YouTube, within the company. So they're perhaps pointing to a drastic scaling down, pulling back of kind of forcing this on the users, because it never has gained the usage and the popularity that they wanted to be a viable competition to Facebook. It was pretty much flat out rejected by most people in the community, especially when it was forced upon YouTube. And this is kind of big news for Google. Google, even though they've posted this last quarterly results or whatever, I don't pay attention to that too much. Even though they posted, successful profits or revenue, or I'm not sure whatever the term is, they did fall short of their goals. So I guess that causes investors and stock prices to go wibbly wobbly. I have no idea how any of that works. I am a simple commoner here. I don't know stocks and bonds and trading, and Anyway, so yeah, that happened, and Google Plus apparently in this report, it was important enough to Google that the company had every employee's bonuses tied to whether or not the amount of success in Google Plus's the social aspect of Google. It's kind of crazy. I had no idea. Google always does. It is kind of one of those popular tech places. You always see all the Google offices have like ping pong tables, and they get free lunch and meals and cafeterias. It almost seems a little bit like a college campus style environment. And I don't think I actually ever applied, but I was always watching. There's a Chicago branch of Google. I was always watching the jobs, and whenever there was some entry level in very, very large italics position at Google, I would always consider applying, but then I would see, these entry level positions actually require 5 to 7 years of experience and knowledge of all these fancy pants programming languages that I simply do not know. I just know how to make things in Photoshop and basic HTML as a web designer. So I don't think I ever applied, but I'm kind of glad. It doesn't quite seem like the environment for me. And I know I'm not. I'm a contractor to Google right now as a full-time YouTuber here, and I do depend on them and the revenue through their AdSense program for my being able to feed myself and pay the electric bill and whatnot, and staying alive as a human being, an adult human. But I'm still not beyond kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Criticizing them or discussing their poor decisions. So yeah, that's interesting news. I don't know that they haven't said it's not sure whether or not they will suddenly reverse the system and say, now you don't need Google Plus to be on YouTube. I imagine that would take a lot of work to undo what they've done. Although I was talking to the guys in the Mindcrack group, and I still haven't. I don't know if you can tell or not by looking at my channel, but I never integrated with Google Plus. Which is a good and bad thing. A good thing because I haven't had to deal. A lot of those guys say there's a lot of problems, and then it creates multiple accounts and logins and things that you don't want, and just confusing. I never had to deal with any of that. But also, I can't comment on YouTube, despite the fact that it is my full-time job. I can't comment on any YouTube videos, my own. I can't reply. So if you've been asking me questions in the YouTube comments, I apologize. I can't reply to you. I can moderate them still. I still can have a distinct level of control over my comments, but in general, I have been Google Plusless, and a lot of the guys were surprised. They're like, "Oh, I thought that was forced upon you." I'm like, "No, I just simply every time it popped up and asked, to continue using Google, would you like to use KurtJMac as your Google Plus name?" I just close the window, and they say, "Okay, we'll ask you again in a little while," and I just ignore those prompts every single time they come up. So I am a wild man. I am a rebel. I am a loner, Dottie, a rebel. So perhaps holding out this long will pay off. So that's just very interesting news. Very interesting news indeed. And it kind of makes me wonder what other projects will be affected by this. I really like Google Voice. I am, as someone, there are a lot of people who are wary of Google and giving Google all their information and whatnot. I'm pretty ingrained in the Google system. I have an Android phone. I use the different services. You all know I was quite upset when Google Reader was shut down, and I kind of wonder if Google Reader was shut down in order to preference Google Plus, because Google Reader was not using content within their scope. They wanted people to be posting content and reading and consuming content through Google Plus. And Reader was kind of the opposite of that. It was simply aggregating content from elsewhere on the web, which is kind of one of the reasons they stopped supporting and shut down that project, it would seem. So it would kind of stink that we lost Google Reader to Google Plus, and now Google Plus is not as important anymore. Like I said, Google Voice I use a lot, and it's been slowly getting eaten away by Google Hangouts, which requires Google Plus integration, and I've resisted that change. But Google Voice I use for like my Android phone. It transcribes voicemail and has a separate voicemail box that's accessible via the web as well as the phone and stuff like that. But we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. Very interesting developments to keep an eye on for those who have lived through the dark ages of Google Plus's integration into YouTube. Woof, Wolfie did not give that the Wolfie seal of approval. I'll tell you that much. That's what that bark was about. I can tell the inflections of Wolfie's barks. That was not a seal of approval. Right, Wolfie? See, he can't even. He doesn't even want to deal with that. So yeah, news. Let's make another elevated hidey hole here. End out the day, and then we will talk about something perhaps slightly more frustrating than Google Plus even. So, and I have a lot of notes about this, but I'm going to try not to get too embroiled and take it away by the topic at hand. So we'll do that in the morning. Wolfie's stuck. I'll be there in a moment. Ah, he was taking damage. She was taking damage. Release yourself. All right, I'm just going to make him spawn. He took some damage from that leaf block. At least it's not like the current snapshots, like any animal touches a leaf block and they start taking damage and die. So that's why you'll see a bunch of like feathers and beef around trees because they touch the bottom side of leaves and they're like, blah, they take damage. We saw that in my Mindcrack episodes when my horse was doing that. Horses is so stupid. But yeah, the next bit of news, of tech news, I suppose you could say, is about net neutrality. I've talked about in the past how Comcast has started to they are forcing Netflix to pay in an undisclosed arrangement to have direct peering with the Comcast delivery servers. So basically, and it seemed a little bit like extortion. For the early months of 2014, Netflix was having a lot of speed problems on Comcast. The speeds were gradually, if you look at the charts, they were systematically and gradually going down for average speeds for Netflix customers on Comcast networks. And it almost seems like somebody was at Comcast was turning the dial down, kind of pushing them into a corner. And they have since now entered into an arrangement where Netflix is paying, ooh, look at this land over here. Netflix is paying Comcast to directly peer with them, to have basically a direct plug. It's more complicated than that, obviously, but a direct plug with into the Comcast system for faster speeds. And surely enough, the speeds have turned around and have started to increase for Comcast customers for Netflix. But at what cost? This is somewhat and pretty much flying in the face of net neutrality. That is the much lauded, I guess, it's a rule for the lack of rules. It's basically net neutrality is the ISPs, the people who deliver you your content, your internet, cannot discriminate between one set of kilobytes versus another set of kilobytes, regardless of the source, or regardless of the content, or regardless of politics or anything behind it. The data from Facebook is treated with the same regard as the data from your video games or Netflix or any other sort of source, and they got in a lot of hot water because they were throttling BitTorrent data anybody who used the BitTorrent protocol on Comcast was getting actively throttled, and they were caught doing that, and they got slapped with a fine from the FCC, and in their agreement to buy NBC, they had to agree to a set of net neutrality rules through 2018 or something like that, to not, basically you worry, you say, oh, they were throttling BitTorrent because it's illegal and stuff like that. Well, no, the basic interface of BitTorrent is not illegal. But it does use a lot of bandwidth, and anyway, it basically states that you can't block or throttle or interfere in any way, shape, or form with any certain type of data versus another certain type of data. So yeah, this is kind of flying in the face of that, because now they're saying to Netflix that, pay this toll and we'll give you this direct connection. Otherwise, you're going to get the crappy connection. And now, basically, the news is that the FCC is going to allow that. They're going to say that it is okay for ISPs, for service providers, to kind of have these toll systems for certain types of content, to have what they're calling like a special access to consumers, to more of a direct line, and that does not fly very well with a lot of people who advocate for net neutrality and the internet as we know it, because it is it's not right. See, it's not right, and it's kind of they're basically going to state that perhaps, well, for net neutrality's sake, you have to supply, talking to like Comcast and ISPs and whatnot, you have to supply a base level of service, of delivery of data, but above and beyond that, you can reserve higher quality service for those who pay this toll. And, what's stopping Comcast from saying, okay, all of a sudden, 56K dial-up service is the base standard, and if you are a website or a Netflix or a bandwidth, a provider of data for the internet, you have to pay more to get the full level of service. Is kind of, that's an extreme scenario, but that, what would stop them from doing that? Apparently not the FCC, because the current chairman, what's his name, Tom Wheeler, came directly from being a lobbyist for the cable industry lobby in Washington. So he's kind of on the wrong side of this fight. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, and not the sort of news we want to hear. You may say, okay, well, they're charging Netflix. What difference does that make to us? Or they're charging, even if they start charging YouTube for this special speed access, or think, what difference does that make to us? Well, basically, then that cost will be turned around and put upon the consumers. Already, it has been announced it's another one of these reports that Netflix will be raising its prices this year, which, whether or not you could say that's a direct response to now having to pay Comcast. We're probably talking millions and millions of dollars for this direct speed to the Comcast customers, or not, is yet to be said, but they'll be raising their prices. What does that mean for gaming? A lot of people forget gaming. Gaming is kind of a high bandwidth requirement. What if Comcast starts to slow down your Xbox Live or your PlayStation Network connection to being able to play online games, because that's a certain protocol that's different than your standard, internet traffic, and then the price of those goes up, or the quality of those goes down, or Steam, your Steam downloads, your Steam network, even for myself and YouTubers who upload hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of data to YouTube per month. Also, streaming services like Twitch. We're constantly having issues with Twitch. I don't stream that much, but I always hear about people futzing with settings and trying to get Twitch to work and not being able to get Twitch to work, whether or not it's on their end or on the delivery end. Will Twitch have to start paying? Comcast or an ISP to have that higher level of service. Who knows? It's a very unfortunate thing. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate. I'm saying it's unfortunate, and it's a very complicated issue, and certainly there are other humanitarian or issues of current events that are perhaps more life-threatening, perhaps in the world, or perhaps more threatening to people's ways of life or quality of life than, say, our internet access here. This is specifically in the United States, but these sort of programs end up, once the FCC makes a decision or the cable lobbyists here in the United States get something turned their way, it tends to go throughout, the rest of the world, because there are those. There's also what's the one? There's some international trade treaty that also includes a bunch of copyright and similar wordage to SOPA and things like that. That once approved by the Americans, will spread like wildfire to other countries around the world. Kind of crazy, and it's. Well, like I was about to say, there's a lot of other issues worth worrying about, I suppose. Careful, Wolfie, that's a giant chasm. This is a pretty basic one, and it's not one to ignore. I mean, it's almost to the point these days where people have suggested maybe internet access should be treated like a utility, like electricity or water. I mean, there was a time less than 100 years ago where people were... where you live somewhere and you're not guaranteed access to electrical current because, they'll do fine. They have gas lamps and things like that. Now having access to the internet is important to being informed, to staying connected, to, for myself, for working, for earning a living, for people to, at the very basic sense, if we live in a quote unquote, again, very, very, very sideways italics. We live in a democracy. One of the more important things about maintaining a democracy is having an informed public. It's the internet and having access is our way of staying informed about things and being able to act and react to these things that are important to us. So, perhaps the internet should start to be regulated and be able to be treated as a necessity, as a utility. And perhaps one day that will be true, but as of now, as the way things are going, it is not looking too good for those of us who share the necessity for net neutrality and against these sorts of corporate takeovers of otherwise what should be free and open interfaces of communication and whatnot. But yeah, try not to get too much into it. I hate on Comcast quite a lot. I am forced into using Comcast because there is literally no other option. Their big complaint, and they're trying to get approved from the FTC in order to buy Time Warner Cable. They're saying, we're under threat from competition for other content providers, and what they're saying is their main competition is mobile internet. Like on your cell phones from, T-Mobile, AT&T, Sprint, and things like that. That's not the same thing. The difference there is I'm actually able to choose what phone company I can use to get my mobile internet and mobile connection. I can't choose where I get my cable internet. Sure, I could get DSL or, like I said, dial-up, or even, I'm sure, I don't even know if satellite internet is available around where I'm at, but regardless, it's a mind-bending and boggling and bobbling topic, and quite frustrating. And check out the articles. There's a bunch of articles and news things and whatnot that you could check out that are far more concise, and informative than what I am able to ramble on about in a single Minecraft day. But that does mean it is the end of the Minecraft day and this episode of Far Lands or Bust, episode 347. I do have quite a few questions to get through, so maybe it'll be Mailbag Mondays where I can answer a bunch of these questions from the donors to Child's Play charity. I do appreciate the continued donations. and the continued fun you guys seem to be having, getting the numbers to line up 141414 here for Child's Play charity. At farlandsofbus.com, you can keep donating and continue to do so. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kurt. I will see you next time.